I got to the point where it's like, I wish I would have died. That would have been a lot easier. And I feel like that would have been a lot better for everybody if I just was gone. And it just was like, I need to reclaim what my life can be and what it is and who I want to be. And so it's like I started writing and like vlogging just for my sake, because I was terrified that I wasn't remembering things. And I like wasn't remembering my days. And so I started to vlog, I started to write, I like started to read, and I started to doodle like every day, just a little bit at a time. And then I like kept going back to the gym and like learning what my new body was like, because it just felt like I was in someone else's body for so long.
It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall, and I know this is going to be one of your favorites. I'm making that promise on behalf of Lindi, our guest. I'm going to make that promise on behalf of me, and we haven't even recorded this episode yet. This isn't one of those things that I record at the end and then put at the beginning. This is before we've even had the chat, but I can tell that you are going to like this. I got this email from Dawn. Dawn says, "Hello. I recently listened to your podcast for the first time. So, Dawn, I'll give you this pass because you're new, but this is a show available in podcast form. We can talk about that a different time." Dawn goes on to say, "You mentioned some of the Paralympians competing that are members of the church. You requested information about any of them. My daughter, Lindi, was briefly mentioned. She truly has an amazing story. She graduated from BYU-I in July, married in September, returned from her honeymoon, and 3 days later was in a horrific accident that she should not have survived." Now, I'm not going to go into all the different parts and pieces that Dawn puts in this email, but she does at the end say she has been on many podcasts and other media interviews. She really does a great job. You would not be disappointed in spending a few minutes with her. Warmly, Dawn. And so this interview was born. Welcome, Lindi.
Thank you. Awesome to be here.
Yeah. So tell me about this. This seems like, life is humming along. You're doing the things. You're checking the gospel boxes, as sometimes we call it. And then 3 days after a honeymoon, what happened?
Yeah, 3 days. I was actually headed to work on my wedding thank you notes.
Oh,
And like I didn't have a job yet because I moved in with my husband and we were living in Sun Valley. And I have little bits in memory of this day, but I was going south in Sun Valley, and if you've ever been there, it's a 2-lane highway. There's no median that separates it, and I didn't have any control over my car. And I just remember like seeing what was this truck that was gonna hit me and just thinking like, this is it. Like, I can't believe it. This is it.
Geez. And obviously it's not it. Spoiler alert, everyone. That was not it. But then what do you remember? Do you remember any like immediate post-accident? What take me there?
Yeah, I remember. So I remember just being in the ambulance and just having so many people in there and that were turning, because my leg was amputated at impact.
Jeez.
And so there was people that were there, and like I don't actually know if they were in the ambulance or if my family members were there, like my past family members. But I was taken care of, and I have little snippets of being out of my body, looking at myself in the hospital bed and just thinking like, man, I don't know if I want to go back.
Wow.
I don't know if I don't know if I want to go back, but I just started this life. Like I just made it, right?
Yeah.
I graduated from college and I was 21. I graduated college early and I got married, and I just was like, I want to go back.
Mm.
But I know it's going to be super hard. And
I want to make sure that, because I've heard people talk about this kind of experience before, where they feel like they're able to see. Do you feel like you're like weighing this out within yourself? We talk within the gospel about agency, where you're like, all right, going back is going to mean trials, and you're going to have to figure your way through this memory and the different physical changes and those things. Like, do you feel like it was another time, like when we were presented with the plan, like, hey, get a body, come this way. Hey, don't get a body, come this way. That, like like a full on choosing of here we go.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I haven't actually talked about my accident in this way, but I feel like this is an appropriate podcast to do it with,
Yeah.
um, because the listener base is gonna kind of like know what I'm talking about and not
Yeah.
think I'm like making stuff up. But it absolutely was like, all right, I need to make a choice. I have like the choice is mine. If I go back, it's gonna be hard. That's not a secret, but but it's gonna be worth it.
Hmm.
And so it was all right, like let's get back. And so I remember like the first memory like I have back in like my physical form. I remember waking up and just being like so confused to where I was. And like I woke up and my mom was there and I have a traumatic brain injury that the diagnosis was, hey, she's either going to be in a vegetative state or she's going to be in a nursing home for the rest of her life. Like people don't survive this type of injury. And that was just one of a huge list of injuries that I had that you take one out, like 18 inches out of my intestines, like you take just one thing out, it's a lot. Amputation, it's a lot, but having it all together at one time, like I just like God's real, like I don't know if I can tell my story to anybody and have them think that, okay, maybe there's something a little higher power going on here because the physics don't add up.
Yeah. There are so many questions. I hope that you'll just allow me to just kind of fire them at you because something that you said just a little earlier, I'm curious about. You said amputated at impact. Does that mean that like your leg was not a part of you anymore as they took you out of the car?
My leg came in a bag separate.
Ah, ah,
That's,
ah.
that's graphic, but like it was in pieces along the highway.
Oh my gosh.
So just that alone, the fact, I mean, you have huge arteries in your legs. So the fact that I didn't bleed out, a miracle one. There's just so many like divine interventions that allowed me to survive, and just the how many people did the right thing, for first responders to doctors, like nurses, everybody like was just divinely supported, I believe, to do what was best for me to survive and have the best chance at not only surviving but having a life afterwards.
Talk to me a little bit more about the traumatic brain injury, because certainly people will, you hear about like concussions, and that's technically like a TBI.
Yeah.
There's a protocol to be able to come about. But I have to think, based on how you have described the rest of this accident, this is like someone took a couple of egg beaters into your head and went,
Yeah.
now try and come back from it.
Yeah. So the type of brain injury I was diagnosed with was a severe diffuse axonal head injury. And what that means is all your neurons in your brain are sheared in half. So it's like adult shaken baby syndrome. And so all those neurons connected that like allow you to do things mindlessly, like, write your name, go to the bathroom, all of that was gone. So I had to go from zero to reconnect those in a new way to relearn everything.
So then you sort of wake up and you start to have these memories, and this is where you can kind of dial back and go, I remember this. So you mentioned you wake up in the hospital, your mom is there.
Yeah. And so I just was like, what's going on? And she, probably for the 100th time, because with brain injuries, like you're not like it's 51st dates. You're not
Yeah.
remembering, like it's not saving and transferring back to like long-term memory. So she's like, you're in a really bad car accident. Like you lost your leg. And I was a gymnast for like 14 years. I wanted to do gymnastics at BYU, and
Uh-huh.
I didn't have the grades, and they just didn't work out like that. But I loved physical activity. Like I've always been a gym rat. I've always loved moving, and I just have found a lot of joy from it. So to hear that my leg was gone, it was like, well, what's the point? Like
Oh,
I'm not
really?
like there's so many things that I'm not going to be able to enjoy. Like I think the first thing I said to my mom was like, how am I going to flip? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and, I said, well, I asked her how long I've been there, and she was like 6 weeks. And I asked her, well, like, what have I been doing?
Yeah.
So I was like, well, like, what have I been doing? It's like, well, dude, like, you've been fighting for your life. Like, we've been just trying to keep you alive. Cause, like, with brain injuries, the best description is like a lion that hasn't been fed in a month in a cage.
Huh.
Like, you're just agitated. You're like impulsive. Like, I was ripping out IVs, ripping out feeding tubes,
Oh.
like biting people. And it just a caged animal, and you just have no control over anything. And so learning how to like control like my impulses again, like that's
Mhm.
just something I have to work on. Like, and it was like I was heartbroken when I first woke up, absolutely heartbroken. And then I was like, hey, you're married, like this is your husband. And like I remembered him, and it's just like, okay, which was good, right?
Yeah.
And like I just so many miracles and so many blessings, and I just knew that it was gonna be a long road.
Take
Uh,
as much as you can reflect it, because this won't be your experience. Certainly, this is what you remember, right? Like, yeah, I remember I was going to go do the thank you notes, and then 6 weeks, and now I'm pulling IVs. By the way, the tiger or the lion waiting to be fed, that is a great sort of picture of like, no, let me out, give me. I love being able to take that. What, as others have reflected this experience to you, what was their experience like? I mean, you talk about, and I think beautifully so, that there were tons of people working on you, and you say probably people from the other side saying, like, hey, are we, let's help her out as much as we can. Let's guide these people that are working on you. But there is a perspective, certainly from your mom and from your husband, where they're finding out about this. What have they shared with you about their experience, juxtaposed to kind of your experience, at least with this initial accident?
well, my family, my side, unfortunately, has experience with brain injuries. My grandfather was in a motorcycle accident when he was in his 40s and lived 30 years beyond that. But he was hemiplegic and just never fully recovered back to who he was pre-accident. And so when they were told about my brain injury, like they knew exactly what they were getting into. And
Can I interrupt you real quick? I don't know what hemiplegic is.
so you have no function on half of your body all the way down,
Oh,
your right leg, your right arm.
okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess, as I break down the word, but I was like, I don't know that I've ever heard that phrase before. Sorry about that. So they're familiar with it because grandpa had. Hmm.
Yeah, my family's medical, and so they were very literate in what was going on. And my husband's perspective, like he went into work, and there was someone who was late to work because there was an accident, and it was like he got a call that it was me from my mom, like an hour later, and he just like dropped everything and went to the hospital in Boise because that's where I was air flighted. And I can't speak from his perspective, but like watching your brand new bride, like basically dying, like he said his goodbyes because I had so many internal injuries that I was just bleeding out, and my family made the decision like, okay, we're not going to play God. Like she's suffered enough. Like we're going to put her on palliative care and just
Which
make
is what exactly, if people don't know what that is?
so you're not doing any life-saving measures. You're not giving blood. You're not doing anything that could help sustain life.
Hmm.
And my siblings flew in to say their goodbyes. And then the next day I was awake eating peaches. And they asked me what I wanted to do. Like they're just like, okay, what do you want to do? And I said like hashtag pink. What? And so like my sister scrolled through my Instagram to see like what the heck that meant. And it was like my mom's a breast cancer survivor. And so and she got breast cancer when I was like 11 years old. And so I watched her just like fight and beat things. And so hashtag pink meant hashtag fight.
Mm.
Like, all right, let's rally. And that was like 2 weeks after the initial accident. But I was an animal. They're just trying to keep me on the hospital bed, and like I did fall off a couple times because I was thinking that I could go walk upstairs without a leg.
Sure.
Like you're just not your executive function and your ability to see how things are sequenced or decision making is just gone.
Hmm.
It's just like you can't rationalize anything.
Did, again, you'll have to forgive because I'm just sort of like it sounds like they would probably have to like restrain you to the bed then, right? Because otherwise you in a danger to yourself, ripping things out and so
Yeah.
very healing, but also restrained. That's wow.
Yeah. It's like, hey, we need to make sure she stays like we just all hands on deck because these poor nurses are working so hard and we just need to help them out because I just was like a monster.
So things start to, kind of snap back together, right? You're starting to make sense of it all. Take me to there where you're like, all right, I don't have a leg. I have this brain injury. You innately have hashtag pinked, which I think is tremendous. You know,
Yeah.
not able to do so much, but you can be able to say this is what I would want and to have what it means, and then to see the fight that you've been able to go through. But then you start kind of like rebuilding, restructuring what your life is going to be. Take me to that. Is that happening in the hospital? Is that not until you get home and go, what am I, crutch? Am I a prosthetic person? Like take me to the restructuring.
So I got life flighted back to Spokane, Washington, where I'm from Boise,
Mhm.
Idaho, to do rehab because that's where my parents are from, and then my in-laws are in Central Washington, and so it was just going to be a lot better for my husband and I to have support if when we moved back to Spokane. And so in rehab, I did occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, everything every day, and I was there for 2 weeks.
And is
And
this, sorry for interrupting again, are you rebuilding like this is how you move your arm? Like, is it that basic to like grab this cup? Like, it's that baseline what you're doing?
yeah, yeah, learning how to transfer from a wheelchair because I couldn't put any weight. I couldn't weight bear on my legs because I had so many fractures in my pelvis. So I had to wait until I could get a prosthetic because we just needed to make sure that everything was healed
Sure.
and not rush anything. And so I was in rehab, I got discharged, and I still wasn't able to weight bear after that for until like December. And I just was like gobsmacked. It was like, what do I do? Like, I don't even know what to do. I don't know what to do. Like, I kind of want to act like nothing happened because I woke up and I like got my phone back in rehab and I just was like honestly so embarrassed that like the whole world knew what happened.
Hmm.
And but also I was so like moved by how many people came out of the woodworks to support me and to make sure that they donated to a GoFundMe that my gymnastics community hosted, and like people donated blood, had blood drives in order like for me to be supported, and like I just was so moved that so many people were willing to help me.
Hmm.
And so I was also very overwhelmed and I just didn't know how to exactly piece my life back together. And I feel like when I got out of when I got out of rehab, got discharged from rehab, I basically was like a teenager with my brain and maturity level and decision making.
Hmm.
And I like for the next year and a half, it just was like it was rough. But I started to work a job like in January after my accident just to get me doing something. And so I went back to like, I was the office manager for my gymnastics club that I trained at.
Cool.
And I like went back to the gym and I was like, okay, I like this. And I just started with basics. I started with like just walking on a treadmill. Like once I got my prosthetic, I was like, okay, I want to learn how to use this thing as quickly as possible. So I'd go to my gymnastics club. I'd do laps around the floor with my walker just to start learning how to walk again. And I just would piece everything together. And it was so difficult, but I like reached back to what I knew I liked previously. And
Mhm.
like I have an art degree. I was an artist. I'm an artist. And so that like to have that be a struggle to even write my name at first, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't like everything was just taken like feels like everything was taken away from me.
Yeah.
And then I hit like a switch and it was like about a year and a half after and my life was just it just was in shambles. Like my husband and I were separated.
Mm.
like getting a divorce because I like, and there's a lot about that I don't remember because of like post traumatic amnesia and stuff. And I was like, wow, this one thing in my life is taking away everything.
Mm.
Like I'm so unhappy. Like I don't want to. I got to the point where it's like I wish I would have died. That would have been a lot easier, and I feel like that would have been a lot better for everybody if I
Yeah.
just was gone. And it just was like I need to reclaim what my life can be and what it is and who I want to be. And so it's like I started writing and like vlogging just for my sake because I was terrified that I wasn't remembering things and I like wasn't remembering my days. And so I started to vlog, I started to write, I like started to read, and I started to doodle like every day, just a little bit at a time. And then I like kept going back to the gym and like learning what my new body was like because it just felt like I was in someone else's body for so long.
Mm.
And I had an occupational therapist in rehab, look at my chart, like, gymnast, like accomplished gymnast, bodybuilder, she asked me if I've ever seen someone run with a running blade. And I remember being like, yeah, like Oscar Pistorius, like
Yeah, duh,
that.
duh. Yeah, yeah.
I remember him. And then she asked me if I knew what the Paralympics were. And at that time, like I feel like we've grown so much in the media. Like you're seeing a lot more Paralympic stuff, but
Yeah.
7 years ago, that wasn't on my radar. Wasn't even close. And so I was like, I don't know what those are.
Mhm.
And so she's like, look, I think you would like it. And I think you would be kind of good at it.
Hmm.
And so I took her like a year and a half later, or like, yeah, I think a year and a half later, I took her up on her offer and I looked up Parasport Spokane and I went to practice. And I went to practice on crutches because getting a prosthetic fit was just obnoxious for the first 3 years of being an amputee.
Sure.
And I like couldn't make it across the gym without falling because I slipped and fell because the floor was wet because it was snowing outside. And but I got back up and I went to meet my current coach, and he asked me what I wanted to do, and I was like, I would like to run,
Uh-huh.
and he didn't laugh at me
Uh-huh.
because I've had so many people, who I told that to, and they were like, that yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You're not even going to be able to squat. Like
Yeah.
I had my first prosthetist like tell me that I probably won't be able to squat.
Jeez.
I just was like, bet, like I think that's
I
false.
I should clarify too. My laughter at that was because there are so many different events that are available for people with prostheses. That's what I was laughing at when you said, I'd like to run. It wasn't, oh, she's not going to be able to run. It's like, that's like saying, what sport would you like to play? And someone says, sport. It's like, okay, there's 100 million things that you could do within sport. That's where I just want to be very clear about where my laughter was coming from. I want to
Yeah.
take a break real quick. I want to pick this right back up. Let's take a break. We'll come back in the second block of the Cultural Hall.
Imagine running a small business today. It's challenging. Imaging and internet presence is an absolute must. Even with that, you're still a small star in a bright cyber universe. Now, imagine you have someone who understands how to get your site designed for your talents and then easily searched by potential clients. Imagine Lennon Design. Whether it's strictly a website or a whole package of logo creation, advertising media, and promotional materials, Lennon Design is your partner in business. They'll test the boundaries of their imagination to create something unique for you. When you need creative, affordable design, let it be Lennon Design. Call 801-699-3022 or visit lennondesign.com.
Here in the second block of the Cultural Hall, remember you can always email us, contact@theculturalhall.com. That is the email address. We love to hear from you if you like this or other episodes, or if you hate episodes, we can hear that. We're tough-skinned. You can say, I didn't like that episode, not one bit. You wouldn't obviously be saying that about this episode, but there are some others maybe you would. Contact@theculturalhall.com. Lindi, I want to dial it back just a little bit. So you, in a way, and I don't want to be this guy because I'm not ever this guy, but in a way, you're given this sort of I don't know, the adage or the whatever thing would be like this gift, right? This gift of like a restart.
Yeah.
The gift of life just in general, that you aren't dead, right? That we're having a conversation now, and that you're alive and being able to experience further experiences than you had up to this point. You, in a very odd sort of way, a gift given to your family where they had the chance to say goodbye to you, only for you to be like, nah, just kidding, I'm not leaving and I'm still here. Uh, Talk to me about that a little bit. That is the thing that most people, I don't think, get the chance to experience. Do you look at it as a gift, or is it more of like it just is what it is, or that whole experience of like dying but not dying, but having a completely different life? What is that to you?
I feel like that's such a loaded question
Bring it.
because it's like it's not an experience a lot of people can have.
Mhm.
And it's like, and I like, I don't want a lot of people to have this kind of experience just because of like it's so terrifying, and then just like it just affects loved ones like I wouldn't even think. But it was definitely like I could see what people were gonna say at my funeral, and that was so like so strange, but it wasn't, and it just was like an absolute like reality check of like what what matters and what impact like I had that I didn't realize I had, and I just could see it. And for the first year and a half after that, like that scared me, that terrified me.
Hmm.
I just was like,
Why did it terrify you?
just because I was like, I just want to be in my own space. I don't, I like, I'm a very private person. Like, I just don't want, I just didn't want that. And I don't have that choice though. That's not how my life has gone. And so it was, I had to be okay with stepping into what impact I can have and have had in the past, and just being able to own that. Cause it's like, I remember like, and I've gone to like a lot of therapy and
Sure.
stuff. I remember telling my therapist, I was like, dude, my shoes are too big for me. I don't fit them. Like this is like I don't like a total imposter syndrome. Like I just didn't feel like good enough to have that sort of impact. And so it was a gift, and I didn't know what to I I didn't feel worthy of it for a long time. I had like survivor's guilt. You know, I would see other people like once you're gone through that experience, you see how many other people are going through a similar ones who don't have the outcome I have.
Hmm.
And it just like it's like what like why, and that just became so crippling to think like that. And I had to kind of shift my perspective to like, hey, I'm not, this is not a treasure hunt. I'm not looking for one reason why. I'm not looking for specific, like I get to create my own reasons for why it happened and what could be. And once I made that shift, it was like I had a lot more ease and being able to think with a little bit more clarity, to being like, what's my best step? How can I help the most people? And I remember having this moment. I was driving in my car about 2 years ago, and I just said, all right, like I'm ready. Please position me to be able to help the most people.
Hmm.
I was like, that was the conversation I had. And and then I got back to driving where I was going. But I was just like, all right, I'm ready. And that was, you know, it's been 5 years, and I've like stumbled through everything.
Sure, life, right?
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
there's, I mean, and that's what everyone's doing, right? Like we don't have, there is not a like there's not a manual on how exactly like your life is going to play out and what you need to do, and like you just have to rely on like listening to yourself and knowing what the next best step is for you to like serve the most people.
Some people will reflect that they have an anger towards God in an experience like this. Did you experience that?
I yeah, I don't think I was like I super was like angry towards like directly towards God,
Mhm.
but I was mad. I was so mad for the like I feel like for the first like year and a half. And like of course it like comes like I feel like when you go through traumatic like trauma, the best thing is like you get the glass into your skin, and it takes a while for those shrapnel to like come back out, and so you're having things come back even when you thought they were gone. You're
Yeah.
healed, but this piece of glass is getting pushed out of your skin, and it hurts and it's uncomfortable, and you're back there again. And so I was mad. I said, like, I loved and I took really good care of my body. Like, I was very meticulous and like eating and exercising and movement. And I just enjoyed being in a physical form, and to have it just be like thrashed. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, but that's the reason why, like, that helped me survive, is because of what condition my body was in.
Right.
Able to take that impact. And so I was mad. Yeah.
That shift that you have reflected in multiple ways, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, purposefully, all these things that happened at 18 months. You have mentioned, it sounds like, that it wasn't like I went to bed at 17 months and 30 days, and then I woke up, and on the 18th month, the sun came out and it was completely different. But was there any sort of just particular moment that it was like the sunlight has come through, or has it just been once you kind of got past that about 18-month mark that then it was the next right thing, and then here you are?
Yeah, it was definitely like just very gradual. I
Mm.
feel like and I like it to me, it does feel like it was like a light switch, but I know it wasn't. Like, I
Mhm.
just, like, my perception of time is impacted with my brain injury, and so I can't piece together a chronological timeline very well.
Mhm.
Um, but it was gradual, but it took a lot of different light switches to turn back on,
Mhm.
to make the whole room impacted.
Yeah, as you were saying that, and as the people watch the video, she's flipping switches, which was kind of fun. I sort of thought of like a pilot. There's 1,000 switches in the cockpit, that this one has to be up, and this one has to be down, and this one's sideways, and then once all of those are done, the takeoff can occur. That was a very visual thing that, as I saw you, I was like, that probably was what it was like. You get these blades, you can't walk, it's just slipping and falling. It's embarrassing. All eyes on Lindi, guys. She's alive. She's a miracle. What is she going to do with her life? Like, so much pressure. And,
Yeah, everyone's like, "Oh, you're here for a reason." It's like,
yeah,
oh my gosh.
if one more person tells me I'm here for a reason, so then how do those series of light switches turn on where you're like, here we go. Let's get this. I'm running now. I'm a Paralympian.
Well, I mean, it took so much work. I got my first running blade, and I feel like that was another light switch moment for
Mhm.
me. And my first 100-meter time, it took me 44 seconds to get down the track.
And people will note that that's not very fast if you are competing.
No, 44 seconds is like what some people run a whole lap around, just about. And so it was just one stretch, the back stretch of the track took me 44 seconds. But I just was I had to start somewhere. And so I wasn't embarrassed by that. I was like, yeah, like, I've had to go through a lot to get here, so like, this is fine.
Yeah.
And little by little, season after season, like, I didn't miss a workout. Like, I just was so willing to surrender to the process and just what I needed to do every day just to get a little bit better every day. And I knew that was going to matter on the big scale. And so,
How much of that do you think, because when life feels so out of control, that's a controllable that you can lean into? Like, you can control what you eat and that you're doing this. Was it still part of that kind of emotional healing that you were able to physically show up in exactness?
yeah. And control is such an interesting thing for me, because I like think a little bit is an illusion, just because there's so much that's like out of our control.
Yeah, read your life, right?
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, I feel like when things feel out of control, I just want to zoom in and look at things a little bit finer and be like, okay, what is going right now? Because I'm going to lean into that, and that's going to be able to allow me to gain momentum to like create more of good things that are going right. So it's like, okay, I can show up and get a workout every day.
Mhm.
That's something that I can do. And I'm going to zoom into that and see what else I can do that builds on that and just keep building on the things that are going right that you're choosing, right? And so it was like, all right, my nutrition, like that's going to be another thing. I have to organize my time because I need to like make sure training is a priority, but I also work a job. So
Mhm.
being able to like really work on, and that was hard. This is still a little bit difficult for me with a brain injury, is to be able to fit time and places that I need to be and be able to have it all work together.
Mhm.
There's some times that I call my husband. I'm like, okay, I just need to talk this out with you and I'll get to the solution. But if you want to jump in and like just help me a little bit quicker, that'd be nice. And he'll
Mhm.
listen. And he's like, okay, that's not going to work because you need to be here at that time. And that takes 20 minutes to get there. So just like little things like that. But I just leaned into what was going right and just building on that and zooming in.
As you're talking about time, I'm like, man, maybe I need to call your husband. Listen, I'm thinking I'm going to try and be here at this time. And then I've got this. Can I fit this in? And your husband just becomes this powerful resource for a lot of people to be like, no, what are you trying to do? It's a fascinating, it's a fascinating look at sort of humanity that we look at experiences like this and we go and this is not to downplay the inspirational. I think what you have accomplished is tremendous, but like everyone is fighting
Yeah.
some level of these things. Yours exaggerated because of this sort of thing, but everyone's trying to figure out how to do like the next right thing and how to balance, the things that they want to do with the things that they have to do and all of that. Do you as you share your experience with other people, certainly being willing to come on and talk about this, do you feel it a responsibility that your story is inspiring to other people, or are you just like, hey, this is just my story. This is who I am, and if you gain value from it, that's what it is. How do you like feel about your story when you share it with other people?
I this is such an interesting thing from a para athlete perspective.
Hmm.
Inspiration is kind of looked at like a not a great word because of the connotations, because there'll be athletes who are going to the grocery store and people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're an inspiration to get out of bed." And so it's just kind of looked at just not how you think it would be, but
Educate us. What should we be saying around it or not say anything?
yeah, I like when you see someone with a disability, like literally just treat them like a person because that's what they are. They just happen to have a disability. And you're not going to go up to someone in the grocery store. It's like, wow, like you're an inspiration for being here, right? The only reason you're saying that to them is because they have a physical disability.
Yeah.
So that's like, I feel like that's such a gray area. But for me, like I don't like, because I wasn't born with a disability, that's not as triggering to me
Yeah.
or comes with a lot of like negative things. But I share my story and I want to continue to share my story so people, can find inspiration. Like, hey, if she can do that, like I can also do a hard thing. And here's things that Lindi did that I like. Let's see, do I have a good network that can help me? Do I have a good family? Do I have some good friends? Just pulling things that I've done and been successful with and being able to, for people to use it in their lives to get through hard things. Because the one thing you can count on with life is like, there's going to be hard things.
Yeah.
That's the definite thing is like life's going to be hard. And so it's like I would love my story and my experience to be shared with people so that they can take what they can learn from it and apply it in their lives to make it more lush, more enjoyable, not looking at hard things like, oh my gosh, this is the worst, but looking at like, hey, this is an opportunity to expand myself and my capacity, and it sucks, but look how beautiful it can be.
Yeah. At the level you're uncomfortable or that you're comfortable with talking about this, you mentioned that at a time you and your husband were separated post accident. Talk to me, like how does that work through? Because essentially, I don't want to be too like whatever about it, but like you marry someone and he had a vision of like I have married this individual and this is what our life will be, and
Yeah.
it sounds maybe super selfish or something, but it's like this was not what I married into, right? Someone
Yeah.
could very easily say something like that. Was it just figuring out what your new relationship was, and then you guys were able to come around? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Brain injuries are just so complicated because you can't see them.
Hmm.
And so the person who has them looks normal. Like you just don't know. And so it was like I was, a 15-year-old, but I was also supposed to be a wife and I like was supposed to heal. And I just was like, I just didn't have that like capacity. And like, I don't remember a lot from this time, but I just felt like I was going to be a burden. I was just like, look, you're like who you're wanting is like not here.
Mm.
And like, I think it's better if like we just go and then it was like I started to before I reached out to like get back like for us to get back together or start dating again, it was like this was like a light switch. Like I remember asking my mom, is like, hey, when's Nate gonna get home? And she was like, what are you talking about?
Mm.
She's like, he like you guys are like separated. And so it was like, oh my gosh, like I want to be the best version of myself because that's what he deserves. And so I started building everything back together. So reading, writing, drawing, and just rebuilding who I wanted to be. And then it was like, okay, I know he wanted to be there for when I was ready to start running. I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I think I'm there. Like, do you just want to come to the park with me
Mm.
to run? Do you want to come run with me? And he's like, absolutely.
Mm.
That's not something he wanted to miss. And so we went to the park. I tried to run, and it's like so funny because it's like I didn't have a running blade or anything, and so it just wasn't. It wasn't, and I also wasn't like strong enough. But it was. I was ready to try, and that was huge. That was like what was different is that I was ready for it, ready to try.
Mhm.
And just from there, it was like I just was like, okay, what are we doing? I was like, you take as much time as you need, and I will wait as long as I like. I will wait until you're ready, but I would like to revisit like us and our marriage and like I married you once, and so I think that I've always stayed really true to myself, and that's something that I've noticed through this whole thing is like the whole brain injury thing is like I was the same person I was when I was a teenager. So it's like I've always stayed true to me
Mhm.
and not try to be anybody else but me. And I think that's been like a huge blessing in my life because it was easy to retrace my steps and be like, all right, married you once, let's start dating again. And so we did. And there was a lot of things that we needed to work through and a lot of being able to communicate how I was feeling and what was going on in my head
Mhm.
and being able to explain it so that he would understand and being like, hey, this is the brain injury and just kind of separating those two is like what's the brain injury and what's me and not taking any offense.
Mhm.
And it was like we talk about it now as like, hey, we chose each other twice
Yeah.
and how grateful we are now that we've had that experience because if anything happens, when things happen, hard things happen, like we know we're stable, like we got each other's back for everything.
Mm.
And just having 50 years of marriage experience packed into like the first like first 13 days,
Yeah. Yeah.
like looking back, like I'm so grateful to have that experience so young and early in our marriage because that's setting us up to just have such a beautiful relationship now. And like I tell people who don't know anything about any, I was like, yeah, we were separated, and they don't believe us
Right.
because you just can't tell. Like we've just worked both of our parts. Like we've just worked on communicating and being able to meet each other's needs where we can and knowing that each other can't be everything for one another. Like that's a lot of pressure to put on one person.
Mm-hmm.
So just having a lot of grace and continuing to choose each other every day.
Which, again, just to reiterate, I think is just a beautiful lesson for anyone, right? You're with a partner that you choose to be with every day, and circumstances may come and they may go away and things like that. It's a tremendously romantic story of the two of you guys choosing each other a couple of times. I have to ask, did you get married a second time? Air quotes.
No, we didn't. We didn't. I definitely think we'll do like a little like a vow renewal or something like that, 10 years. But in the same vein, like I also had like my therapist and I did like a funeral for my old self.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that like I had to come back and just wrap my head around. Like, hey, I'm not trying to get back to the person I was. Like, I'm making a new person. Like this is like and I think that's a huge thing with people with brain injuries or like anything acquiring a disability is like you're always trying to get back to who you were. And it's like, hey, no, things are just going forward. So it's like you have to grieve who you were and who you were going to be and just the future you thought you were going to have and make room for that grieving process to be able to step in to the now, the new, the what is.
People will describe that as chasing ghosts if you're trying to attain what your life was like, that you literally, and we don't do this very well just as people because we think, oh, life was so much easier when I was in high school. Oh, when we first met, I wanted to go back to that. And that's just not like how life works. It's grieving the end of, I'm no longer in high school. That marriage as we knew it is not that, which doesn't mean we can't be together, but it is different. It is a different marriage, a marriage wherein we communicate and we're able to have these things, and it is something entirely new. It may have remnants of what it was like before, but it is saying, hey, that thing is over, and then moving into the new. I want to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk all about the Paralympics. And then there's 3 questions we ask everyone who steps into the Cultural Hall. I'll ask those of you. We'll come back and do that in the 3rd block. BestDJinUtah.com is the website. That is where you go if you would like me to come and DJ your event. Now, will I do a family reunion where you all wear the same t-shirts? You bet I will. Will I travel to wherever you're at? Am I reasonable as far as what I cost? Yes. Do I bring a good time? Yeah, all the things. Listen, Best DJ in Utah, it's my company. It's a thing I do that allows me to be able to have the time to do the Cultural Hall. So if someone's getting married, you think, man, they need a great DJ. You're throwing a party, whether it's a 50th or 60th or 40th or 20th or whatever the party is. I've done them all and would love to be able to do that. An anniversary party, certainly done those. I did a baptism in 2023. Yeah, we did a big dance party at a baptism. Spoiler, not a Mormon baptism, but it was fun nonetheless. BestDJinUtah.com is a website. I will get back to you within 24 hours with a quote. Come on now. BestDJinUtah.com. Here in the 3rd block of the Cultural Hall, remember you can become a Patreon saint of the Cultural Hall. You go to patreon.com/the Cultural Hall, where as little as $5 a month allows you to be a part of the secret but not sacred Facebook group where all the Patreon saints are hanging out. We have tangential conversations around all sorts of things. Like, backdrops of people's videos, or, she mentioned that she's in Spokane. There's a great chicken restaurant in Spokane. Like, people will talk about whatever they want. That's what's so great about that group. Go to patreon.com/the Cultural Hall. Spokane is beautiful, just as a quick aside. What a great area of the country.
Yes, absolutely beautiful. Lots of pine trees.
So gorgeous. Now, let me ask you this. Paralympics. So the trainer is like, yeah, you should run. And then you're like, run? Paralympics. Like, it seems like there's something between like, hey, I'm gonna run for my good mental health or maybe some exercise, and you're like, let's go Paralympics. Take me there, how that decision was made, and then what it was like to be a Paralympian.
So I feel like I made that decision when I walked into the practice the first day. Was like, all right, I'm not doing this. I have this like streak in me of intensity, and like it's very competitive, and if I was gonna do something, I was gonna go full in, all in, and I knew that I had the potential to get where I wanted to go. And I was flexible on the timeline and just willing to do everything I could to make it work. So my first year it was like 44 seconds, and then 1 year of off season, and then my time was 20 seconds.
Jeez.
So I dropped it in half, and then I year after year, I just kept shredding my time for the 100 meters and long jump. Like I was jumping further and further, and I tried out I was in Tokyo, or I was there for the Tokyo trials.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of, with COVID, that was kind of like my first year, like actually having a full season of competing, and I slipped on my own blocks and didn't make Tokyo.
Oh,
I was like, oh, like that was gutting. And I remember stepping into my blocks and just feeling like, I just imposter syndrome. Like, I don't think like I should be here. Am I even worth, I just felt so unworthy in that. And so I'm really grateful that I didn't make the Tokyo team, because I just I was not ready emotionally or mentally. I just was not ready for that. And
boy, that is something that you do not hear very often. I'm grateful that didn't. I mean, that is a perspective that is enlightening to who you are as a person. Yeah, my gosh.
I just was like, I didn't feel like that then, but the next day I was back on the track and being like, I have more work to do.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get back to work. And that's the mentality I've taken throughout the whole thing. So I didn't make Tokyo. I didn't make the world's team for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't make the Paralympian team later that year. And then I didn't make the world's team for earlier this year because COVID, the World Championships was moved from 2021 or 20, it just was moved. And so we've had the World Championships here and Paralympic Games, which is just unheard of. But I didn't make that team either. I was the first alternate. And so come Paris trials, I was just I'd set the American record earlier at the trials for Worlds in March for the 100 meters. And I cut my time down by a second in less than, in 6-7 months.
Which is a huge deal. Can you speak about that? Because I think that when you start to get into these, where the whole race is less than 12 seconds to cut a whole second. Where are you at in that perspective?
For above knee amputees, I was 16 seconds all the way down to barely under 14 seconds.
Wow.
That's working. So to cut a whole second in that was huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's look, I know what kind of work I put in, and I burned that.
Yeah. So
the imposter syndrome just started to shed off, because I knew exactly what kind of work I put in. It was no, I did, this is mine. I've worked for this. So come Paris trials, I remember stepping into the blocks, just with so much confidence, and just being I'm so grateful for the process that I've got, the process that's brought me to this moment because of who I am, what character traits I've developed, what hardships I've been through. And it's I have so much faith in myself. I'm ready to just let go of the reins and bring it home. So I set another American record at trials, and the only American to ever go under 15 seconds in the 100 meters. And to put that in perspective, only 4 above knee women amputees go under 15 seconds in the world.
Jeez.
So I set that record. I made the team, and I had to reshape what I thought about myself, because I hadn't made a team yet.
Mm-hmm.
So to take no, I'm an athlete who makes teams out of nothing. That was a mental shift that I had to make. So I was ready and not feeling like an imposter when I did make the team.
Yeah.
So that was something that I had to do different this year, is just be no, I am an athlete who makes a team.
Yeah.
That's me. And so come around, I make the team for the Paralympics, and I want to talk about just this distinguishing between the Olympics and Paralympics. The best explanation I can be that I've heard is the WNBA and the NBA.
Okay.
They're at the same level, but it's important to say Paralympics and not Olympics, because they're different events.
Sure.
So, and amputees are actually not allowed to run in the Olympics. So,
Yeah, interesting.
yeah.
Oh, that seems like a whole conversation that we will not dive into right there, but I can definitely tell that there are feelings there. Let's move in. So
Yeah.
you're in Paris and you're like, Papa, da, 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 honor just to be able to be here, but I worked my butt off to be able to be here.
Yeah. And I didn't want to just go and like as soon as I made the team, I was like, right, I'm going for a medal. Like I wasn't letting off the gas or anything. And so I got there. I had no previous experience of a major because I hadn't been a team.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't quite know what to expect. I didn't like with the village, like it just is, there's so much beyond just competing that I didn't really think about. I was just thinking about what I was going to do on the track and not everything that comes with that experience. And so it was so much learning for me as an athlete and as an individual of where to put my energy and to make sure that I was going to be ready to put everything together in the right moment.
Mm-hmm. And then you get to the race.
And then I had long jump 1st, and I jumped like just 3 centimeters off my PR, which was great. I wanted to do better than that, of course, but I held my own. And performing in front of like the Stade de France holds 80,000 people.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, just that in and of itself, you're like, I wish I would have performed better. It's like, pause, Lindi, you're in front of 80,000 people doing this thing that anyway.
Yeah, I know. So it just like, I'm because I've had so much experience with competing with gymnastics, I know how to lock it in and just execute. Like I'm really comfortable in that space. And so I had long jump I made finals, which was huge. And then I had prelims for the 100 meters and finals in the same day. And it was the last day of the games.
Jeez.
And so everyone was done. My finals race was the last race on the track for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Like it was the last race. And so I like for prelims, my race strategy was like, all right, get out quick, stay loose, stay comfortable, don't expend more than you need to make finals.
Sure.
And so I did that, and I stayed with my race plan, but I was like, man, I should have ran faster. It was like, I'm like, all right, we'll just save it for everything for the finals. And so finals come around, and if you go back and watch this race, there's drama because, you're running with prosthetics, and prosthetics are loose cannons, and you do everything you can to dial them in so they're correct. But these prosthetic limbs are fitting over a body that is so dynamic. So there's a lot of moving parts with them. And so there was two athletes that actually fell right before the finish line. And it's like I saw it out of the corner of my eye, but I finished my race, and it just was a moment of like, I did it.
Yeah.
Like I did this, and my time wasn't what I wanted, but I just was like, what? Like there's more work to do. Like I'm not there yet. And like, no shame in that. Like I'm ready to get back to work and put in the work to get where I want to go. And let's see how many like things I can like fine tune for the next year to get on the path for LA 2028.
Yeah.
So
be the medal home crowd and be on the podium and all this stuff. It's so funny. Having had this conversation recently, I had the opportunity to talk to another member of the church, Jason Smith from Ireland, a runner as well in the Paralympian, the winningest. You and Brother Smith hang out all the time, I would imagine, at the Paralympics, right? Members got to stick together. Do you know him at all?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's a fascinating interview. You can actually go and listen to it if people haven't caught it at the Cultural Hall. Just barely posted. It's the one right before yours. He is the winningest Paralympian ever, and he's a member of the church. He's from Ireland. He is blind, and so that he races, but can't see. And so we talk about that. The thing that I think is interesting is you're like, well, there's more work to be done and all that. And I'm just hearing this and I'm like, you're running in front of 80,000 people and you almost died in a car accident. You're like, there's some training I got to do. We'll get to the worlds. And I'm like, you are, sharing your story with thousands of people. It's now I don't want to say inspiring. It's motivational. I don't know. It's whatever it is that is a
Like
compliment
inspiration's
to
not
you.
bad word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I it's an amazing story, and your mom, as we started with the email from her, she's right. The time that we have spent together has been super valuable. I've appreciated how generous you've been, not only with your story, but I think it's the thing that I have taken away from our time together is that you made the choice, and I think that that's significant, and that resonates throughout your story quite a bit. You made the choice to come back to your body. You've made the choice to go back to work, to try and do these things. And now we're making the choices that will, knock on wood, but we never know. Hopefully lead you to LA 2028 and on the medals podium and all that. Um, tremendous, tremendous story. I think an amazing individual. I would ask you these three questions that we ask everyone who steps into the culture hall. The first question is, do you have a calling right now? And if so, what is it?
I don't have a calling.
If you could pick one for yourself, whether one that exists or make one up, what would you pick?
Oh, I think I would really like to be with the young women.
Okay.
I'm saying that out loud, and so next week I'm probably going to be called like. But I just think like I think about when I was in the young women's and just like I just would like to be there to support those girls and to show them like, hey, you don't need to be anybody else but yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and like yourself is enough. And I think that I would love to be there, to be their cheerleader, and to be someone that can show that there's a lot of things that don't matter at that time in your life, but there's a lot of things that do. So
Yeah. Man, what a powerful young women's leader you're going to get called to be on Sunday.
I know
Uh,
it's like I have to be careful what I say because like I say something and then it happens very quick.
yeah.
So
I always have to caveat if ever I say I want to do something or like I think it would be fun. I think it would be fun if I always say, but don't do that. I don't have time for it. I'm not interested right now. I've got other things I'm trying to take care of. The last question that we ask everyone that steps into the culture hall, I'll ask of you, and we ask you to interpret it however you would like. The question is what is your favorite part of your faith?
my favorite part of my faith is my ability to and I use different language, but I'll like use my language and then I'll translate what I mean. But my ability to recognize my intuition
Hmm.
and just like the the calmness I have created within myself to hear what I need to be doing. And so just being really in tune with, what the spirit's telling you and recognizing how it communicates with you as an individual. And I feel like I've really developed that in my life, and there's just a lot of power that it holds.
Hmm. You mentioned that one of the things that you feel like people have sort of resonated with you, and in some telling of it, it seems sort of trite that people are like, well, God must have a divine purpose for you, for keeping you around or whatever. Do
Yeah.
you feel like or if you were to put into words like what your purpose, what you've learned from your entire life, and I don't want to place it just in this because you've lived so much other parts of life besides just this accident. Do you feel like you know what your purpose is?
I mean, I don't know specifically,
Hmm.
like, but I'm creating my pathways to live my purpose. Because I feel like, purpose isn't just one thing, it's who you are. And
Yeah.
so I think like everyone just like leaning into who you are as an individual, like that's your purpose, because all of your gifts that were given to you are there to help everybody else here in your own divine, unique way.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Lindi, I hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body, that if you're not healthy enough to listen this week, that you'll be healthy enough to listen next week. And then when the time comes, you will be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, Chris at Alpine Lakes Travel, Rick McGee, Debbie Wanless, Chocolate Cake Bites Podcast, and the Tiger with a U will be saving a seat for you on the back row of the Cultural Hall.
Save me a seat, it's sure to be neat on the back row. We really gotta go on the Cultural Hall show.